Hello everyone, thanks for coming back to the channel. The title for today's video is how to get more recommendations on LinkedIn. Keep watching and I'll give you my thoughts after the break. Hi everyone, when you log into your LinkedIn profile, recommendations appear here. Let me just scroll and show you where they are. Here are the recommendations. So recommendations, not to be confused with endorsements. Endorsements are okay. That's when somebody clicks to confirm that they think you're worth endorsing for a particular skill. And you click on there and there's more. So there's all the endorsements that I have currently. And let's close that again because, as I say, we're not really talking about endorsements. We're talking about recommendations. Recommendations are people who've worked with you giving you a personal testimonial and describing their experience working with you. So it's somebody that knows you face to face and has worked with you in the past, or has had some contact with your organization or company. So recommendations carry a lot more weight than endorsements. I've received 19 recommendations and given 14. In this video I'm going to discuss 4 points or 4 tips to help you get more recommendations. The first of those is probably the most obvious, but it's something that not a lot of us do, and I'm also guilty of not doing this enough, and that is simply asking people to write a recommendation for you. We're in contact with lots of different people on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and many of those are clients and business partners that we're working with, and yet we don't remember to ask them for recommendations. So if we don't ask for them, they're not going to proactively, this is the real world, people are not going to proactively just think, oh, I worked with Mike, should I give him a recommendation on LinkedIn? And I don't necessarily think to myself, I worked with somebody, should I give them a recommendation on LinkedIn? So you need to give them a reminder, a gentle reminder, not too much pressure, and say, would you be happy to write me a recommendation, please? And then that recommendation, once it's been approved by yourself, will appear somewhere like here. I'll just click on here to show you some of the recommendations I've received. You can see there's some more actually, but I'm not going to scroll down for all of them. And the more recommendations you have, the more credibility you have to new contacts and new partners. You'll be amazed at the kind of inquiries and leads that you get when people can view your profile, see lots of recommendations, and they think, here's somebody I can trust straight away, and then they'll send you inquiries or possibly information relating to their business, and with a view to setting up a meeting or requesting a proposal. So recommendations do really count. So the first way to increase the number of recommendations that you have for your personal profile is to request recommendations when appropriate from business partners and people that and clients and people that you've worked with. The second way to receive more recommendations is by giving recommendations. So generally the world works on reciprocity in many instances. So if you give a recommendation of somebody, they're more likely to return a recommendation of you. So in that sense, giving recommendations, obviously only give authentic recommendation of people you work with and happy to recommend. But when you do that, people are more likely to reciprocate and write a recommendation for you. So giving recommendations is the second tip towards gaining more recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. Write authentic, original recommendations and people will love you for it. Okay, the third way of getting more recommendations on your LinkedIn profile is, I'm going to say it's perhaps the hardest, but it's something that you should be doing, you should be working to day in, day out anyway, is to do outstanding work. If you work on a project and it's simply outstanding, maybe it's because of the coordination of the number of people you have across different countries, or it's just the level of complexity, or it's a technical innovation. There are lots of projects, and we don't get them every week in our careers, but they do come along that are simply magnificent in terms of the level of scope or the innovation or how progressive they are. And when you are involved with excellent work and people understand your role in delivering an excellent project or an excellent product or an excellent service or an excellent event, then people are more likely to write recommendations for you. So being somebody who's focused on delivering outstanding work or delivering excellence, as I wrote about in a blog post some years ago, if you're focused on delivering excellence and outstanding work, you will attract more recommendations. And for those of you who are experts in your field, who run workshops and are trainers and make speeches, when you've made a speech or when you've run a workshop or a particularly good training session, that is a very good time to ask people for recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. They just, in the moment, they can remember how you made them feel. They can remember the contribution you made to the success of the workshop or the event or your speech. They can remember all of that because it's very live and it's very current and it's in the moment. That's a great time to ask people for their recommendations of you on LinkedIn. And it's easy to forget. It's easy to get caught up. But if you can make a point of reminding yourself when you have those speaking events, as we're thinking about people who are coaches, trainers, etc., make sure then you ask people before they exit to leave recommendations for you. So doing outstanding work was the third way of increasing your level of recommendations. And the final way of increasing your recommendations that we're going to talk about today is just to go back in time slightly, not to invent a time machine, but there are lots of people you may have contacted or connected with from your career, from years back in your career, that it may have been before you were active on LinkedIn. So there may be people who could write you a recommendation, but because you haven't worked with them for a number of years, you haven't thought to contact them or connect with them and then ask them to leave a recommendation. And I think just going back and saying, oh, remember that time I worked for this company? That was a wonderful time. I should contact everybody then from there, connect with them, and then ask them to write recommendations. And just because it's many years ago or, a few years ago, you often don't think to look backwards. But it's a very effective way of finding people who are happy to recommend you, ex-colleagues for the most part, and then asking them to write your recommendation, and you will have the opportunity to write a recommendation for them as well. So finding old colleagues from companies that you worked for before you're active on LinkedIn is a good way of boosting your number of recommendations. And you can see from my profile, I have 19 recommendations, which is good, but I'm going to redouble my efforts to get some more recommendations so that I can increase the number of recommendations I have on my profile. And I will update you via the comments when I have more recommendations. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope the 4 tips that I've discussed today have been useful to you. And I hope you go on to make those requests and get more recommendations for your profile. Thanks for watching all the way through. If you've enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up. Click on my face to subscribe and click on one of the 2 screenshots to watch another video. I look forward to speaking to you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye. Hello everyone, thanks for coming back to the channel. The title for today's video is Invite LinkedIn Connections to Follow Your Company Page, Feature Removed. Keep watching and I'll give you my thoughts after the break. Hello everyone. You may have heard the phrase, a week is a long time in politics. Well, it's also, quite obviously, a long time in social media. Last weekend, LinkedIn introduced a feature whereby you could invite your LinkedIn connections to follow your company page. I made a video about that and I'll link to that now. So if you look in the card above, you can see that video. You can click on and see that video. Since then, LinkedIn has decided today, so it's Friday the 21st of June, LinkedIn have decided to remove that feature. So you used to be able to, a few days ago, you were able to click on admin tools, and there were there's a feature here that said invite LinkedIn connections to follow company page. It now says post a job new, which is a totally different piece of functionality and not at all related. So they've removed the easy link to invite your LinkedIn connections to follow your company page. Now, I can only speculate as to the reason for that. My explanation is probably it's to do with revenue.